Hello, welcome back to the Hoop Junkie podcast, the number one podcast in the world.
According to us.
I'm your host, Zach, and I'm joined once again by the one and only Stat King Guru himself, analytic god, the one and only Chance Baker. How you doing, Chance?
What's up, man? I know you're feeling pretty good after last night's events
Let me
across
tell
the
you-
sport a little bit.
Let me tell you, how about them Cowboys, baby?
Yeah, that one, Dak needed that one. I think the whole Cowboys fan base needed that one. I was happy for y'all. I didn't expect it to go that way. I thought Brady would bring a little more based on what he's done in the past. But yeah, you guys put it on him.
Oh, man, like going into the game, everybody was like, hey, Zach, how do you feel about it? I'm like, man, I'm telling you. Like I felt like just like somebody who has just had the worst luck and just nothing but trauma built in. Like everybody's like, look, dude, on paper the Bucks aren't that good and all that stuff. But I'm like, look, I'm telling you, what will go wrong will go wrong. Well, what can go wrong will go wrong. Whatever with us, man.
I read the one story where I guess McCarthy in the locker room, like I guess this was a couple days before the game, he like had 10 baby pictures. Did you hear this story? He had like 10 baby pictures of the Cowboys, and these were the 10 guys that were alive the last time the Cowboys won a road playoff game in 1993, and he had their baby picture posted up. And so, yeah, now they can finally extend that. So 30 years later, they're back.
Man, yeah, that's crazy. 30 years later, we finally win a road playoff game. Man, hey, whatever. They got it done. That's all I can ask for.
Yeah, my Titans are sitting at home, so you guys are in a better spot than
me. Hey, that's all right. You got it next year. Well, Chance, I want to re-jog your memory, okay? Do you remember when we first started this pod, what was one of the first things that we did?
Man, honestly, that seems like it was so long ago when we look back now. But if I recall right, the first thing we did was we got together and we evaluated our predictions for every single team and basically what we expected, what tier we expected them to be on.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep. And I think you're spot on, brother. So check this out. Since we're at the halfway point, I know we kind of did a rundown on all these teams. I think we need to take it a little bit further. I think one thing that we can do is we can go through that whole list of where we predicted teams to fall in based off of our pencil and paper notes that we got. I think we can go through them and then and kind of see how right we were and how wrong we were based off of where we were at the beginning of the season. So if you don't mind, can you give us a recap of the teams that we picked?
For sure. So we broke every team down into 5 different categories. We used some fast food analogies at the time, but we'll just stick to the basics for this one. So the worst category, we called that the Wembanyama sweepstakes. That was basically the teams that we knew were going all in for tanking. They were not going to win this year. We had 3, 4, 5. We had about 8 teams on this category. And some of these surprised us. Some of this were right where expected. But to list those off, they were the Utah Jazz, the Houston Rockets, the Detroit Pistons, Indiana Pacers, San Antonio Spurs, Charlotte Hornets, Orlando Magic, and the Oklahoma City Thunder all were in the bottom category, the Wemby sweepstakes. Next category, these were teams that were not tanking, but they were right around the play-in kind of bubble area, around like the 7 to 10 range. We had the Washington Wizards, Portland Trailblazers, Sacramento Kings, Phoenix Suns, New York Knicks, Los Angeles Lakers, and the Chicago Bulls. They were all in that. We called it Dairy Queen at the time. So those were all your play-in all-stars. Shout out to Patrick Beverly. Next, we had the playoff locks. Very simple list. Teams that were right there, not expected to go all the way, but should be in the playoffs for sure. That was the Raptors, the Pelicans, the Timberwolves, the Heat, and the Atlanta Hawks were all in that middle category. And then we got towards the upper echelon. These were the teams that were contenders, but they need a couple breaks. We call these contenders with luck, if you will. So we only had 3 teams. It was the Cleveland Cavaliers and our teams respectively, the Dallas Mavericks and the Memphis Grizzlies, we had as contenders with luck. And then finally, the top teams, these were the real deal contenders. And we had the Boston Celtics, the Nets, the Warriors, the Bucks, 76ers, Clippers, and the Nuggets. So that's how we did on round 1. Some of those sound about right on first glance. Some of those I think we might have to do a little bit of tweaking on.
Yeah, you got that right. Well, look, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. All right, Chance. Let's sit down and evaluate the Boston Celtics. So the Boston Celtics have been just terrorizing most of the league right this year, right? Jason
Put it
Tatum.
mildly.
You got to put it mildly, right? Jason Tatum is having an MVP caliber year for them. Do you think that we got the Celtics pick right?
Yeah, this one, I think it's hard to argue that we pretty much nailed this one. We had this as one of the contenders coming out of the East, and at this point in the season, I think they've got to be a pretty heavy favorite to actually not only come out of the East but to win the whole thing. They've been the most dominant team. I think the Bucks started out like 9-0, and
Mm-hmm.
the Celtics were a little bit behind them, but ever since then, Boston has just been on a complete tear. I mean, when you look at their numbers, number one in the league on offense, they've put up basically like record-breaking offensive numbers based on this point of the season so far. Their offense has just been unbelievable. Tatum just dropped another 50 piece. That guy is just steadying himself as an MVP contender. But they're also a top 10 defense in the league too. I mean, I see no other way around it. They're definitely still that top tier. They're a contender. This is pretty much one of the easiest conversations I think we'll have
Yeah,
tonight.
super easy. You know what? Interesting fact. I didn't realize that was the only 50 ball in Boston Celtics history.
Was it really? Larry Bird never did it?
No, Larry never had a 50 ball. He had 40s and things like that. And I think a lot of that is like just a testament of just how the game has changed. Where you got a lot of leading scorers who just didn't put up a whole bunch of 50-point games.
Right.
And then too, I mean, it's cool, Jaylen Brown being out that game, but Tatum stepped up and he balled out, man. And so it's really cool seeing him. And the funny part is, if you think about the beginning of the season, like we put them in the tier one just because of they made the finals run. They locked down on defense all under Udoka's leadership. And then when Udoka left, we kind of were like, they're hiring this young Missoula inexperienced guy. Will they be able to keep that up? And dude, this team has not missed a beat. And there's a lot of ways you can even argue that this team is significantly better than what they were last year. If you look at the certain things that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum struggled with last year, with just taking people off the dribble and getting and creating for themselves, they have fixed a lot of those issues. Now, obviously, at times, I mean, like sometimes their offense does have moments of stalling, but it's nowhere near to the extremes of what it was like last year. So, I mean, yeah.
And we have to remember, too, they did most of this without Robert Williams, who's just now getting to where he's playing, 25 minutes a night. And so that's going to take their defense to another level, too. As I mentioned, they're 6th right now in defense on clearing the glass, and that's only going to go up as well. You could argue that might hurt their offense just slightly, having him as more of a defensive anchor. But either way, I mean, just having him back into the rotation is going to help even more. Brogdon coming off the bench, that was a really, really great addition for them as well. That's just another guy that can create off the bench.
Right.
Brown and Tatum continuing to get better. Yeah, I mean, this team, they're definitely the pick. I think I picked the Bucks at the beginning when we did that initial pod to come out of the East, and we still haven't seen the full picture with them yet. We'll obviously get to them later on, but the Celtics are a clear-cut favorite right now to come out of the East. Like you said, just so dominant on both ends of the court.
Dude, they're the number one team in the league at 33-12 and on a 7-game winning streak. I think we got that pick right.
Yeah. I think there's not much more to add on that one. We're 1 for 1. Should we just go ahead and cut it off here and say we got them all right?
Oh yeah, we're done here.
What's next?
All right, the Brooklyn Nets. So, Chance, this is another team that's had a up and down year. We've got Kyrie in and out the lineup for all kinds of reasons. Kevin Durant out of the lineup now. We talked about at the beginning of the season how they struggle with their big lineup just defensively, but it looks like Nick Claxton has turned that thing around for them, and now he's out here screaming that he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. So how do we feel about the Brooklyn Nets?
The Nets are a funny team to me. So we had those as contenders at the beginning of the season. I think I actually have to keep them in contenders, but this is the one team that I think might have spent a little bit of time in every single category throughout the season. So I think when the season first started, they got as low as Captain D's. Like when they were beginning, when Kyrie had his drama going on, Steve Nash was struggling, they had a losing record. I wouldn't quite put them in, the lower like Wembanyama sweepstakes type, but they were pretty far down there. And then, they get Jack Vaughn on board. He's the head coach now. Kyrie finally, makes his apologies and gets back on the court. And from there, they just shifted all the way back up to where I honestly put them back in the contender status again. I think with Claxton solidifying himself, he is a legit Defensive Player of the Year candidate. As a homer, I think Jaren Jackson's still number one, but Claxton makes a huge difference the way he can guard so many different positions and protect the paint. Simmons has come around on defense too. Still just has no interest in scoring whatsoever. Doesn't even look at the goal. But at least his defense is coming back to that pre 76ers form that we saw before. So I think with the addition of Vaughn, obviously the one caveat is KD's out for at least another few weeks. How are they going to fare without him? They were relying so much on him. He was having, honestly, one of his best seasons in his career, which is just crazy to say at the age and the point of his career that he's in now.
Right.
But he's just as good as ever. So can they withstand that and still solidify a top 4 seed? We'll see. But when it comes down to the playoffs, if you have KD and Kyrie healthy and engaged and locked in, along with the surrounding pieces they built with Claxton and some other guys, I think they're still a contender. But I'll leave it over to you. What do you think?
Man, I mean, I think they are, man. Look, you get KD back healthy. KD's playing like an MVP level player despite the injury. I mean, I understand like he's going back through another kind of serious injury, right? But if he can come back and give them 90% of what he was giving them throughout the year so far, I mean, you think about in the playoffs just comes down to possessions. And you had, as an opposing team, if you tell me we got to deal with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, doses of them for 40 minutes a game, that's tough for almost anybody to stop as long as they stay out of foul trouble. So, I mean, I think we got that right. I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think they're still a contender because this team can still win it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like I mentioned, they've literally seen every single side of the coin so far, but I think they've got to be a contender at this point. When you look at the East, I think there's only a couple teams that might can knock them out. So I would still put them at the top. They just need KD to be healthy. If KD comes back and then has another knee injury in March or April, then this team shoots down all the way down 3 or 4 slots real quick. But right now, I keep them in the contender. So I think we're 2 for 2 so far. So I think we're on a little hot streak. But
man,
the Nets, they've been a wild ride. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so look, we're going to keep this in the Atlantic Division, and let's go across the street. Let's talk about the Knicks. So, Chance, I think we got this one wrong.
So we had the Knicks as a play-in type of team, and when I look back, I think we got that one wrong too. The way they started the season, they looked around that play-in level, but I tell you what, Jalen Brunson might be the acquisition of the season. As much as I know you love to hear that,
I hate it.
Dallas Mavericks guy, I know that's just music to your ears, talking about how great of a signing he was, great value.
Yeah,
but he's been unbelievable. Julius Randle has just been putting up some 2K numbers lately. He's been incredible as well. I would move the Knicks up. Can't quite put them as a contender status yet, but I think they've definitely solidified themselves as a playoff lock type of team. I mean, they're 7th in offense, 12th in defense, and that's only continuing to go up as well right now. So, yeah, I'd put them as a playoff lock. What do you think?
I mean, like Jalen Brunson has been playing like he just won Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Julius Randle has been having a great bounce back year from the year he had last year when everybody was trying to get him out of town. Remember in New York?
He was like flipping off the fans and cussing them out. It was a whole ordeal. Times have changed over there.
Oh man. RJ Barrett, he started off the season struggling. And it's been, honestly, it was probably some of his worst basketball we've seen out of him so far in the league. Just as far as like consistent stretch of bad games. But
yeah,
man,
he definitely came in looking a little out of shape and looking out of rhythm, but he's turned it around lately. Yeah.
But I mean, I think like the Knicks are legit. I feel like we've said this for a while, but I think the Knicks are one big superstar away from actually being a legit threat in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, I think they're still a little bit more than that away from competing with, the Celtics, and then even competing against a Brooklyn Nets team with no drama.
Right.
But as far as everybody else in the East, I mean, I think they can hang with someone on the Sixers level if they go out and get someone of Embiid's caliber.
Yeah, and I think another way that could be possible, speaking of him, is RJ Barrett taking that next leap.
Right.
Look back, he was drafted third right behind Zion and Ja, who both have turned into perennial superstars at this point. Can you get a leap like that from Barrett? Is he a late bloomer where he makes that leap? Because, yeah, you've got Randall and Brunson, who I think are both great complementary pieces, but most people would say they're not like lead pieces to a championship type team.
Right.
Still think Barrett might have that potential. If not, it might be time to include him in a package, maybe to go get that win now superstar type of player. We hear about like the Siakams of the world that might be coming available over the next couple of weeks. Could the Knicks be looking to make that move, or maybe be patient, wait another year and see how things play out? But I mean, they've solidified themselves. They're at least going to be in the hunt. They're going to be a playoff team for sure. And at this point, as a Knicks fan, I'd be happy with just that, with what they've been through in the past.
Man, like, I mean, it's progress. I mean, at some point you gotta just take it where it's at, and I think their front office has done a really good job. So are we? Where are we thinking about place? I think we both agree on moving the Knicks. Where do you think we should place them?
I think they go up one tier. I don't think they're a play-in, although they could be a play-in team technically, but I don't see them as a team. Like, if they finish 7th, they're winning a play-in game and they're going to be in the playoffs. Like, I'd bet a lot of money that they at least make the playoffs regardless of what seed they fall. So I think I'd move them up one spot to a playoff lock level right there in the middle. What do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think we cut them short just one tier. They still got a lot of kinks. Like, I'm still concerned about their rotations. Tibbs is somebody that you can't trust them all the time just because of some stuff. But yep. I think this team is definitely shown that they should be up one more tier.
Yep, agreed.
All right, so let's talk about the good old Philadelphia 76ers. So, Chance, we had this team as a contender. How do we still feel about that?
This one is tough for me. This one, I'm kind of torn between contender still or contender with luck. I think the fact that they are in the position that they are with all the injuries that they face, I mean, they're right there on the border of home court advantage. I think at the time of this recording, they're tied for the 4th seed with the Cavs right now. That's with Harden missing a lot of games, Maxey missing a ton of games, Embiid missing his fair share of games as he always does. Sitting at 11th on offense, 5th on defense, which is pretty typical for them. As long as Embiid's anchoring their defense, they're typically going to be in the top 5 or 10 on that end. But it's just, do they have enough to beat a Celtics or a Bucks type team, even the Nets, in a 7-game series? I don't think I'm quite there yet. As much as I love the Sixers, as much as I love Maxey and watching him play, and he's finally back, as much as I love Melton, who filled in great with Maxey out and is having a great season so far, I think I would lean more towards the Sixers as contenders needing a little bit of luck. Part of that luck is just like Harden and Embiid staying healthy. We've also never seen Harden really take over in a playoff series the way he's done in the regular season. I'm not convinced that now past his prime that suddenly changes.
Right.
So I think I'm leaning towards dropping them one level. What do you think? Where are you at with the Sixers?
So, my situation, I mean, this is how I feel about things. Like, this has been a year where we've had a lot of people in and out of lineups, like across the board. A lot of teams have dealt with it. And I think, and especially in the Western Conference, you really see all of that in the standings, on just the way that it's so tight and the way that things are fluctuating, just because a lot of people have been in and out of lineups. And so I try not to hit teams too hard for just people being hurt, because I get it at the end of the season. Hopefully everybody's healthy, and then we just roll the ball out and see what happens.
Right.
My issue with the Sixers is I don't know if they can stay healthy.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you look at the history of Joel Embiid and you look at the history of James Harden, between those two players, bro, they have missed so many games when it's mattered. You're talking about end of the season, getting Embiid hurt last year in the playoffs, Harden dealing with his hamstring in Philly and in Brooklyn, and on his way out the door in Houston. I don't have any faith in the Sixers' health at this point. So just for that reason alone, I'm going to have to put them in the contenders with some luck, because they're going to need some luck in staying healthy.
Exactly. That's where I'm at too. They need some injury luck, not just, getting a good matchup, another team has a player out, but they need their own guys to stay healthy, and it's going to take luck at this point, like you mentioned, for that to actually happen. And so, yeah, if I'm looking at them matching up against any of these other like perimeter teams in the East, like the Bucks, the Nets, the Celtics, I just have a hard time picking the Sixers over them. Even if they're all healthy, I think it would take a couple really big breaks. I definitely think they could get there. And I think they could be a team that could make another move too. They don't have a ton of draft capital to trade, but they could be a team that's a little active, try to find creative ways to find another wing in the trade deadline. So they could get their way up there, but I think I'd have to drop them down to that contenders with luck for sure. I think I'm in agreement with you.
All right, let's move to the last team in the Atlantic Division. Let's talk about the Toronto Raptors. Chance, we had them as a playoff team, mid-tier team.
Yeah, they're right there in the middle as a playoff lock is how we had them before.
Yeah. So, are you how locked up do you still feel about that?
I do not feel locked up at all about this team. They're currently not even in the top 6. They're currently outside of the play-in, tied for the 11th seed right now, or technically tied for the 10th seed. They're 20-24, 4 games under 500. Biggest thing with them is they just cannot score in the half court at all.
Yeah.
They're pretty mid-level. They're 15th in offense, 15th in defense. So they're right in the middle of the pack on both sides. But Siakam is having an unbelievable season so far, just putting up ridiculous numbers. OG still looks as good as ever. Scotty's had kind of a sophomore slump, especially shooting the ball. He has not looked the same. And, I know there's some chatter around like what's going on with Scotty Barnes. I'm not too worried about that long term. I think he'll be fine. Still love him as a prospect. But this team, they're definitely not a playoff lock anymore. And for me, I'm putting them back in that play-in, but don't sleep on this team just completely blowing it up at the trade deadline and putting them into those Wembanyama sweepstakes contenders. Like that is a real situation where they could end up moving Siakam, move OG, and move Van Fleet, and just build around Scotty in the future and, completely go all in on rebuilding. So that could happen, but as of now, I think I'd put them right where they're on the standings, right in the play-in. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on this one too. I think we've got to demote them one level down to the play-in. Just the reason why is because this team is going to make a move at the deadline. I don't see any world where they keep all of their guys going into this offseason, especially when you start talking about people like OG. Like the way that's shaping up is like they're pretty much going to have to move him, and so I don't see, especially with the way this market is, where there's not enough sellers and everybody's trying to buy right now. They are going to they're going to move somebody. And then you just heard some rumors today about Van Vliet talking about there's a couple teams that are interested in him and potentially wanting to pay him big dollars this off season, and Orlando, and I believe the other team was Phoenix.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I could definitely see them trying to move him and get some value for him, especially if they know he's going to decline that option.
Yeah, he's had a rough shooting season so far. I think a lot of that, we've talked about this before, it could stem from his usage just being so high in previous seasons. Like eventually your legs just wear down and it catches up to you on your shooting. And he was actually on the JJ Redick pod a couple weeks ago, and he even acknowledged it. Like, yeah, I'm not shooting the ball well, but I'm still just sticking with the process. And like, I think maybe a change of scenery could be good for him because of his struggle with shooting the ball. I think Pascal's a big question mark if they want to continue to build around him. He's only 28, so he still could, but do you want to just maximize, because his value is at its absolute peak right now? Like when I saw like Grizzlies trade rumors earlier where they're talking about giving up like 4 or 5 first round picks just to get Pascal back. Like it's starting to get into the conversation where that's not even super crazy. Like this guy is going to be worth a ton. And if they want to cash in on that, then it might be time. Or they could go the other way and they could decide maybe they think they're one move away from winning this year. Right. I don't think that's the right move. I think they need to go ahead and cash in and start rebuilding. But there's a couple different options they can play with this. There's the addition of the play-in has just made things so interesting. Teams are so hesitant to actually sell out and, tank to the bottom. So we'll see where they go. As far as the tiers go, I definitely would put them solidly in the play-in as of now. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we put them in the play-in. Masai Ujiri he's not afraid to make moves when it's time to make moves. So just knowing that, no way this team is just going to be just floating around, barely making the playoffs to lose in the first round. I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, yeah, I think this is a team we'll be speaking a lot about over the next couple of weeks with the trade deadline approaching one way or another, for sure.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's go to the Central Division. Let's talk about those Chicago Bulls. So going into the year, Chance, we had the Chicago Bulls as a play-in level team.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
I've been a little indifferent on them. At the end of the day, I think that's about right. I think they're a play-in level team. They're right there, tied with who we just talked about before. The Raptors are tied for the 10th seed, 20-24. And honestly, a lot of what we just spoke about is exactly true for the Bulls as well. I think they've got a couple guys that have a lot of value now, and it just depends on if they want to push in and try to get their guys some more playoff experience. They're clearly not going to be good enough to win a couple playoff series. So it's up to them if they want to cash in and try to sink to the bottom, or if they want to just go all in for the playoffs. I think right now they're right there in the play-in level, but this is another team that could change really quickly if they decide to cash in on Vucevic, maybe sell Levine. Alex Caruso is another role player who I think could fit on any other 29 teams and be a great addition to them as well. So do they decide they want to just try to accumulate value and play for the future, or just sneak their way into the play-in and just see what happens from there? I think from my tone you can tell which way I'd go, but I think for now they're definitely in the play-in level.
Yeah,
how you feel about the Bulls?
I agree. I really have no other commentary for this one because I think we said everything how we felt then, and I think I would say the same thing now about this.
Yeah, basically everything we just said about the Raptors, just replay that, and that's pretty much where the Bulls are at. It's just what direction they want to take at this point. So I think as of now they're playing another team that could be active around the deadline, but not much more to it than that.
Right. Okay, so the Cleveland Cavaliers, Chance. This was a team I tried hard to put them in the contender category. Have they done anything to change your mind that they should be contenders?
Okay, first off, I'm going to say Garland and Mitchell are probably my favorite backcourt in the league, at least one of those. There's a lot of good young backcourts, but I love Garland's game. I love Mitchell. He's one of my favorite guards in the league as well. I just love this entire team.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't put them in the contender category in the East. As much as I would love to do it, I think they still just aren't quite good enough to get past that three-headed monster that I keep talking about, the Celtics, the Nets, the Bucks. It's just, I don't see them, beating. They'd have to beat probably two of those three teams. Say they finish as the 4 seed. They'd have to go through like a Boston in the second round. And I just don't see them being quite good enough yet. I mean, on defense, they've been spectacular. Third best defense in the league. A lot of that stems from Jared Allen and Mobley just swatting everything around the rim. There's nothing teams can do in the paint against them.
Right.
And they do need that one other wing. They floated with a lot of different options. They've got LeVert. Osman has been there as well. Okoro. Like, they've got a lot of different options for that fifth guy. Yeah. And I think they could be a team that's trying to be a buyer at the deadline and try to find that other wing. But I can't quite get them to the contender status just yet. But I'm willing to listen. So if you've got a pitch to raise them up, I'd love to hear it.
I might surprise you on this. I think I was actually wrong. I think you were right about them. I think that after seeing them, there's a couple things that kind of just concern me about this team. Evan Mobley has not had a bad year by any standards of what I would consider a bad year for a guy coming in his second year, especially as a big. However, he hasn't taken that leap that I originally expected him to take in year 2.
Especially on offense.
Yeah, especially on offense. So I think this team is waiting on Mobley to just kind of step up a little bit more on offense and give them a little bit more. And then I think there's still the Garland and Mitchell dynamic is not all the way refined. It's still a little bit clunky.
That's one thing I was going to mention as well.
Yeah, so when you watch them, it's still a little bit my turn, your turn. It's not necessarily a very free flowing symbiotic relationship yet. So they still got a lot of kinks to work out, and then and to do that in the next 41 games or 40 games or whatever how many games they got left. That's kind of a tall task to get that, especially when you're looking at teams like the Celtics, the Nets, the Bucks, the Sixers, teams who everybody knows their roles on these teams, and all of them are executing at it. So for that reason, I'm actually going to have to change the way that I felt about them, and I'm going to have to keep them in the category that we put them in to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think, and if you're the Cavaliers, I think you're happy with that. You get a 4 seed in the in the playoffs this year. You beat like a 76ers or a Knicks in the first round. You go out to Boston in the second round. I think that's still a great season. I think you're happy with that. Mitchell's still young. Garland obviously is very young, and then you've still got your front court of the future. So I think they're contenders with luck, but I think as a Cavs fan, you've got to be still thrilled with how the season has gone so far. And
Oh
I
yeah,
do think there's a little bit of work to do with the Garland Mitchell pairing. I think they've still got to figure each other out a little bit, but it doesn't seem like either of them are unwilling to do that. So I definitely feel like that's a situation where we could look up next year and this team is like the new Celtics where they're just absolutely dominating in the East as like a easy 1 seed. Like that could definitely happen.
mm-hmm.
Just think they're another year or so away from being a true contender, but with a little bit of luck, you never know. So we'll keep them in that second tier as opposed to just a playoff lock for now.
All right, Chance, we don't have to spend much time here. We can just take a little pit stop in Motown. The Detroit Pistons. We rank them as one of our bottom tier teams that are hoping for the Wembanyama sweepstakes. Their best player, Cade Cunningham, is out for the rest of the season after having surgery. Where do you think this Pistons team should be?
Yeah, they're staying right where they were. It's unfortunate because I think this is a team that if Cade doesn't go down, if a couple other things go differently, they could have been a team that we're actually discussing as like a play-in type level,
Right.
maybe trying to fight for that playoff experience. Killian Hayes looks like an NBA player, actually, which is better than what we could say the past couple of years. He's getting better at facilitating and finding his role within the offense. He's got an opportunity to take on more of a high usage role with Cade out. Ivy looks great. Duran is a good, sleeper pick that they've got on the front court. So they've got some young pieces to build around. But yeah, I mean, there's not too much to go into with them. They're definitely still going to be fighting for that number one pick, and that's about where they're at.
Yep. No need to waste time here. Let's keep this bus moving. All right. The Indiana Pacers. Chance. I think we got this one wrong. So
Yeah.
we had them as a bottom feeder team. Where do you think we should rank them now?
Yeah, so this one, they've got to go up at least one level.
Minimum.
We had them, Wembanyama sweepstakes, and they clearly are just nowhere close to that. With the jump that Tyrese has taken, he's definitely a candidate for most improved player of the year. He's definitely a candidate for one of the most fun players to watch when you talk league pass. This guy makes everyone around him better. Benedict Mathurin coming off the bench has been, while inefficient at times, still a bucket getter off the bench. And then all of a sudden, Miles Turner is awesome again and looks committed, might even be signing an extension to stay in Indiana. So everything that we thought was coming with Indiana has just completely turned the other way. It looks like they're right there in the middle of the play-in, that 8 seed right now. Tyrese with the injury, that's rough timing for that. He's going to be, I think, reevaluated about a week and a half from time of this recording now. So that's a big factor. If that injury lingers and he's out for 3 to 4 weeks, they could really fall pretty quickly. But I think regardless, they're in the play-in, and I think that's where I'd have to put them, just because there's still a few question marks with that injury. We still don't have definite clarity on where Miles Turner is going yet. Buddy Hield's another one. Like, they could still make a couple moves that change the direction one way or another. So I'm hesitant to put them as a playoff lock because of how deep some of those 4 to 6 teams in the East are. But they've got to at least go up to a play-in level. What do you think about the Pacers?
Man, this is where I'm gonna give a hot take. I think they're a playoff lock. I mean, when you sit here and talk about the teams that are around them, they've got the Knicks and the Heat above them at 6 and 7. They're ranked 8th. And then you look at the teams below them. You got Atlanta, Chicago, Toronto, DC, Orlando, Detroit, and then the Michael Jordan Charlotte Hornets.
Yep.
I don't see any of those teams trumping the Indiana Pacers. I understand Miles Turner's in and out the lineup, and people are missing games from and things of that sort. But the Pacers are just clearly better than all those teams. And then, not to even talk about, you got the Miami Heat and the Knicks ahead of them. Both of those teams, one injury where a player misses significant amount of time, those teams are going to fall because those teams are already struggling right now just to float around 500.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. This is another one where, as much as I love Halliburton and Mathurin, again, one of my favorite backcourts to watch, them and the Cavs are two of my favorite league pass teams. But I just think when you look at, so they'd have to pass up, who would we say, the Hawks and the Raptors, I guess, would be like the two main teams, maybe the Bulls, but Really, I would say I'd say the Hawks and the Raptors, the two main ones, and the Heat right above them. So we're saying that they're 100% going to be ahead of all three of those teams, the Raptors, Hawks, and Heat.
Not necessarily the Heat,
we're locking
but
that in?
okay. But I'm confident that they can hold form in this 8th spot at least, because I don't see the Hawks, I don't see the Bulls, I don't see the Raptors trumping them at all. So and if those are their 3 threats, and pretty much unless DC all of a sudden goes bananas the second half of the season. Right. Other than that, nobody else really has a shot. So I'm locking them in.
You know what? I think I'm down for that. I think that this team has done enough to earn our respect so far in this season. Why not go ahead and bump them up 2 slots? I think as long as Halliburton is able to get back to form and he's healthy, they should be a top 8 seed in the East. And I just love Tyrese Halliburton. I just love Benedict Mathurin. So if you're on the edge, give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's make them a playoff lock. Let's lock it in right now.
Let's go. All right. The Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think we need to spend a whole bunch of time here. We put them in contender category. The most drama around these teams, right, is just Drew and Chris being in and out of the lineup, right? Like, yeah, Drew Holiday has the flu or whatever every other week, and then Chris Middleton has missed games, just dealing with injuries and recovery from that. Do you think this team is still a contender?
Yeah, I think as long as Giannis is on the team, they're always going to be a contender for sure. But I mean, they need Middleton back like really badly. Yeah. He has only played a handful of games like all season. He's played 7 games all season, and a couple of those he didn't even look himself to. And so this is a team where they're not a team that can withstand not having a guy like Middleton because of Giannis, as great as he is, probably the best player in the NBA, if not, the best. He's at least top 3. But his game is a very specific game where he needs shooters around him because of the way he plays. He's not going to spot up. He's not going to create from the perimeter. And so he needs guys that can knock down shots and create their own shot. And we start to realize just how important Middleton is, where I stand by. I think they might have won the East last year if Middleton doesn't get hurt earlier on in the playoffs. And it could be another situation where we look back on that this year and say they could have won the East, but Middleton was never healthy. And I think that's the end of the line with them. I think it's just if Middleton's healthy, if Drew's in the lineup, they can take Boston to 7 games and they can win that series. Brook Lopez is just completely transformed his career, and all of a sudden he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
Who would have ever thought that?
Right. I remember, 6 or 7 years ago when he was just a guy that was soft and couldn't protect the paint. And it's great to see how he's developed. And when you look at him surrounded by Giannis and Drew, like they're going to be the number 1 defense in the league at the end of the season, regardless of who's in the lineup, as long as they've got those 3 guys playing a majority of minutes. But they need Middleton back desperately if they're wanting to contend. But as of now, we can't predict the future as far as injuries. I think you've got to leave them in that contender status, at least for now.
Yeah, they've got to stay where they're at. They hadn't done anything to really show us like they're still not contenders. They're still, the team is still 28-16. They're third in their conference, in the Eastern Conference. So they're doing fine.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go to the Southeast Division. Let's talk about those Atlanta Hawks, Chance. So Atlanta was one of those teams that we said was going to be a playoff team. We had them as a playoff lock. They were for sure going to make the playoffs this year. How do we feel about that now?
I feel as bad about the Hawks as if I'm an Atlanta Hawks fan, then there's not many teams I wouldn't trade positions with. I think with the way this season has started, with Trae Young, the drama that follows him around, with Nate McMillan, it's kind of weird. Like it seems like he's wanting to resign, but can't. Like, do they have him hostage? Like they're not letting him resign? Like are they holding him to something? Like it's really weird. Like I've read some reports like he's wanting to resign, he's wanting to be out, but he can't. So I'm not sure what kind of
it's
blackmail they've got on this guy.
They got DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin holding him back hostage in his
they've got the door locked up. They won't let him go. Yeah. Which is weird because things are not working and you feel like they need to make a change at this point. I read another story, I think it was earlier today, where just another one of those like wild Trae Young leak stories where apparently like on one of their flights back, I don't know if you saw this, apparently in the playoffs last year, like he took his own private plane back and didn't even tell anybody and just didn't even travel back with the team. Like there's some stuff like that that's starting to come out.
And he doesn't care about the environment.
Yeah, and he doesn't care about the environment. Yeah. Can't stand that guy Trae Young. So selfish.
Luka
And
would
yeah,
never.
man.
Sixers.
Exactly. Yeah, Trae Young, the anti-environmentalist. We got to get him out of here. But yeah, I think at this point they're a play-in team at best. You know, they're another team that could be active around the deadline. John Collins has been in the trade deadline rumors since I first started following the NBA. I feel like
Forever.
I mean, this guy's just always in there. We'll see if they finally find a resolution. At this point, it might be one of those blockbuster like get Trae Young out of here and build the team around DeJounte because
Right.
they make that move. They trade up so many future assets to get DeJounte, and Trae Young still is not going to play off the ball. Like if Murray's running the show, we talked about like Garland and Mitchell, and there's a little bit of tweaks they need to make, but we're confident they're both going to figure that out, right? I'm not so confident on this situation. Like Trae Young has shown me nothing to say that he's like willing to be a second playmaker and not have the ball in his hands 24/7. So yeah, I have nothing but bad vibes from the Atlanta Hawks. I think they're a play-in team, and even at that point, I expect them to make the play-in, but I don't see them winning enough games like in that play-in tournament to actually make the playoffs. So I'm solidifying them right there.
Yeah, man. I think we got to drop the Hawks down at least one minimum. Just because, man, the Hawks are a team that I've gotten to the point, and I'm sorry, guys out there, but I've had to take a break from the Hawks this past week, man. Just because,
for your mental health.
Yeah,
sometimes everybody needs a break from the Hawks.
I just needed a break from the Hawks, man, just because I mean like they won their last game against Miami, which is another team that's been struggling. But man, like the Hawks have it is just so hard for them to win games sometimes. Like I get it, I understand. Look, they've won. And this is crazy coming from a team that's won 4 out of the last 5 games, and I'm sitting here saying this. But whenever you sit here and watch them play, man, it is like sometimes like just pulling teeth just watching them play. And so for me, I've got to drop them down because you can tell there's no chemistry amongst this team. That you can tell there's a lot of drama and a lot of locker room issues going on. I know Capella's going to be back in the lineup. You're getting John Collins back, and all these things. Maybe things will start to peak up a little bit for them. But man, I think we're so far beyond that point now with this team that I don't necessarily know if there is any type of coming back from that. You know what I mean? It's like when you sit here talking about all that drama that you said, and then I sit here and think like all these stories. Okay, cool. Trae did all those things, but how do we know about them?
Oh yeah, they want that leaked.
You know what I mean?
They want it leaked.
Anytime these stories get leaked like this, like it shows you that like people don't necessarily like this guy in that locker room. And I don't think a team where the best player is just really hated or talked about to this degree, I don't necessarily think that team can be successful in a playoff hunt. So if it's my call, Chance, I say we bump them down one.
Yeah, I think you bump them down one play-in for sure. Based on talent alone, they're good enough to make the play-in. Like they're not a tanking team unless they fully sell out. But yeah, I can't put them as a playoff lock anymore at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. But then too, I think too, like this team has been really interesting too from a lot of standpoint because like Bogdanovich hasn't had just a great year, and I think a lot of that has highlighted the loss of Kevin Huerter. I mean, he's over there in Sacramento doing his thing, lighting the beam, smiling, talking about. He said, "Man, I'm googling conspiracy theories about the Kings, like all that stuff, man. Like he's purple and gray or whatever the colors are, man. Like through and through now. And I think a loss like that really hurt this team, and I don't think they expected that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, he has been unbelievable for Sacramento, and yeah, it sounds like they're holding him back a little bit. And is this going to be something we see in the future, kind of like the Rudy Gobert situation? Like when guys leave Atlanta, like when John Collins ultimately finally leaves Atlanta, does that open up, his full potential? Like, do we start to see a situation where guys look better outside of playing with Trae Young? This might be me going too far towards like hating on Trae Young because I'll admit, like, he's a great player, like very talented. Just wish he would adapt his game a little bit more, focus on being a better teammate. But I'm curious to see like what happens when some of these other Hawks start to get other roles in other environments and, see what happens from there. But yeah, as of now, they're a play-in team. And I I don't really like to watch them that much. So let's move on.
John Collins gets traded to the Pacers and becomes a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, yeah. He becomes a Hall of Famer to make a whole documentary about how they wasted his first 5 or 6 years in Atlanta.
Oh man, that would be tragic, man. I mean, woo. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. I'm done talking about them. Well, look, I'm done talking about the Hawks, and I'm done talking about this next team. Let's make this one quick. The Charlotte Hornets. What are we doing with them?
Yep, we're keeping them in the sweepstakes as a team. I'd love if they could get Wembanyama because him and LaMelo would be awesome together. But yeah, LaMelo turns his ankle at the very beginning of the season. He's out for 3 or 4 weeks, comes back, and like the second or third game back, he turns his ankle again. He's really the only reason to keep up with the Hornets at this point. He's actually sneakily having a really great season. He's shooting like a ton of threes a game, and I think he's averaging like 4 or 5 made threes a game. It's been actually really incredible, and he's at this point, it's just developing him to show that like he can actually be like the lead guy for a future playoff team. And that's all you're really at with them. They don't really have a lot of other pieces. This is a team that is going to have a busy offseason. They've got some other moves up their sleeve, I'm sure. But at this point, LaMelo's going to be shut down again by mid-March at the very latest. They're tanking, and they'd be a fun team to have Wembanyama, but that's about it for the Hornets.
All right. So we kind of talked about this team a little bit, but the Miami Heat are 24-21. They are 7th in the West. We had them as a lock to make the playoffs. How do we still feel about that?
I still think they're a playoff lock just because when you've got Jimmy Butler on your team, he's been in and out of the lineup as well. But when he's playing, he's been unbelievable as that guy that I still think they need another guy that can just go get a bucket. Tyler Hero can be that guy at points too, but I think they need another creator. Kyle Lowry has just turned into a dustpan. Like, I hate to see it, but this guy is just – he's not the guy anymore at all. Like, he cannot make a shot on defense. He's just a complete traffic cone. Like, this guy's just fiddling into the air. And I'm sorry. I love Kyle Lowry.
Oh, man.
He's done for.
Hey, I love Kyle Lowry too, man, but – and it's crazy because how many years does he have left on the deal? What, 2 years left?
Yeah, I think he still has two more.
Yeah, man, and you could make the argument that, man, that's gonna be a long 2 years on that deal, bro. Like,
yeah,
Miami's got to be ready to get rid of that man because like Kyle Lowry has been not what they have needed out of him. They needed an offensive generator, somebody who could keep the pace going with this team, create easy buckets for people like Jimmy Butler and Bam, but that just has not been the solution for them this year with him. So, I think they'll still make the playoffs just because, I mean, you got a lineup with Tyler Hero, Bam, and Jimmy Butler. This team has got to find a way to make the playoffs. And so,
for sure.
I mean, even if they dip to the play-in and then win in the play-in round and make the playoffs, I see this team making the playoffs. I don't see them going far in the playoffs, but I see them making the playoffs.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I think if you get this team in a play-in situation against like a Hawks or a Raptors type, a Wizards type team, like Jimmy Butler's not letting them lose in a play-in situation. Like they'll get that 7 or 8 seed, and then they'll lose in 4 or 5 games in the first round, and they can reevaluate from there. But yeah, and I mean, you never know. This is another team. They'll most likely be very busy in the deadline. They'll try to find that playmaker because, they need an upgrade from Lowry on both ends of the court. And, that could be a situation where they go out and get another guy that can really up their level on offense. Then maybe we start talking about them as a contender with luck because you've seen them come out of nowhere before, the bubble season, a couple other years as well, where they're one shot away from being in the finals last year. Like people forget that Jimmy Butler has that transition 3 from the top, and if he hits that, it's Warriors Heat in the finals last year. Like they're really good in the playoffs, and they're a well coached team, so they could get it. But as of now, they're definitely no better than just a playoff lock. And at this point, they're lucky to be solidified right there because things could be going the other way.
All right, Chance. So let's talk about those Disney World Orlando Magic. So going into the year, we obviously had them at the bottom. Has anything changed for them?
Nothing's changed as far as like their tier. They're definitely still in the Wembanyama sweepstakes. But I mean, when you look at this team compared to a team like the Hawks or, the Timberwolves across the aisle in the West, like, wouldn't you much rather be the Orlando Magic than some of those like Midland teams like Paulo has just been incredible for a rookie. I say this all the time, but he seriously just looks like a 10-year vet, the way he moves on offense, the way he's able to play make for his teammates. Like, I just did not expect that from him. Franz Wagner is extremely underrated as well on both ends of the court. Ball out of nowhere is a legitimate player. Like, who would have saw that coming? Like, they've got some pieces to where even if they don't get Wemby, even if they get Scoot Henderson as their new one, and you have a big three of him, Paulo, and Franz Wagner, like, they've got a lot of potential, and they're a lot of fun to watch. They're still in the Wembanyama sweepstakes this year. Nothing will change that. But if I'm, looking at those bottom feeder teams, the Magic might be the team I feel the best about as far as the future goes when you compare them to the other tanking teams, and they've got that to feel good about.
Well, and we talk about teams like Atlanta, a team like that's probably going to make the playoffs. I mean, or make a play-in situation where the basketball has just gotten so ugly where I don't want to watch it. But then you sit here and you talk about teams like Orlando, who we know is not going to make the playoffs or the play-in, right? But man, they are a fun team to watch. Like, when you sit here, you look at the emergence of Franz Wagner this year. Like, man, he has been spectacular. If you're the GM or of the Magic, you've got to sit back and look, man, what do I have out of this duo between Banchero and Wagner? And then you sit here and talk about Bol, and then if for some, the ping pong balls bounce their way and they're able to go out there and go get a Wembanyama and then go sign Van Vliet, oh man, this team is competitive all of a sudden in the East. And
it could happen a lot quicker than you think.
Yeah.
The pieces they've got.
Yeah, and I think Jamal Mosley has done a great job out there coaching that team for his first year out there coaching the Magic. Or is this his second year? Whatever year it is for him. But
he's been solid.
Yeah, he's been solid with them, with those young teams. These guys are competitive. They're playing basketball the right way. I like them. Can't move them in the category wise, but I mean, if we were in school, I would give them a sticker right on their forehead because they have done a good job. All right, Chance. So this is the last team in the Eastern Conference. We're talking about the Washington Wizards. So the Washington Wizards, they made all these big moves and got all these players in here over the past few years, but they're still sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. So when we originally did our ranking, we actually had the Washington Wizards. Where do we have them at? We had them.
I think we had them as a play-in team.
We had them as a play-in team. How do you feel about that now after halfway in the season?
This is another one where when I originally looked, I had them still in that same spot as a play-in team. But the more I think about it and look at it, I think I could be talked into dropping them to the Wemby sweepstakes. They're just, I mean, they've got some talent on their team with Beal, and Porzingis has had a great bounce back year as well. And so they've got some talent. Kuzma's been great to where if they really wanted to, I think they could flirt with that 9 or 10 seed. But I see this team as definitely selling a guy like Kuzma, possibly making a couple other moves. I'm leaning towards putting them in the Wemby sweepstakes, but I don't know. I'm kind of in between. I'd like to know your thoughts on where we're at with Washington right now.
Man, they're in the Wemby sweepstakes, bro. They are too far behind. I mean, they're not, like you said. Look, games wise, they're not that far behind.
They're 2 games back. So they could catch up.
They can catch up, but I just don't see it happening. I really think that, like I said, you got to pay attention out there. It's a lot of teams that are going to be selling. Buying at the deadline, but it's not enough sellers. I would not be surprised if the Wizards, you sit there and talk about, okay, hey, we're going to ship Kuzma off, and then, hey, somebody might give us a tempting offer for Porzingis. Maybe we flip Porzingis for something for like draft capital and things of that sort. And then I doubt Bill gets moved this year on that deal right now, but I could really see where maybe they're like, hey, let's pivot. I know that's crazy just because of all the work they've done to get this nucleus together. But, man, I just don't really see this team staying together, A, and B, I don't see this team getting any, even with the current roster construction and the current situation they're in now, I don't see this team moving any higher.
Yep, I'm with you. I think we go ahead and drop them down to the Wemby sweepstakes, and they better hope they win it.
All right. All right, Chance. So, hey, thank you guys for listening as we went through the Eastern Conference teams of our ranking. Please make sure to tune in next week for our next pod on going through those Western Conference teams. You won't want to miss it as Chance and I sit down and go over where those teams fall in the ranking. Until next week, guys, we'll holla at you.